Welcome to another lesson. In this lesson, we'll be talking about JavaScript function expression. What is a function expression? A function expression is a function assigned to a variable. Now, before I continue, remember that in subsequent examples of working with functions that we have seen in JavaScript, you realize that when it's time to invoke or call functions, we always try to assign it to a variable in order to be able to, get that out, the output on our browser or in our browser tab. The reason is because I was trying to show all those results in the browser tab. With console.log, I can easily just pass in the function name and it will give us results. So this is what I'm saying in short. So if I have a function like this, so let's say I have a function like this, so, and I say, okay, return a plus b, and I pass a and b as parameter here, and I come down and say sum 4, 5, 4, and 6. Now, actually, right now, nothing is happening. But if I do something like this, console.log. So if I wrap this inside console.log, now let's check my console. Easily you get the output. So I have been assigning it to a variable in order to be able to get it in the browser tab. But if I want to get it through console without wanting to go through that process, I can easily use console.log to get the result. That's what I'm talking about. Now, 2 says a function expression is a way of defining a function within an expression. A way of defining a function within an expression. We already know what an expression is in JavaScript, rather than as a standalone declaration. You know that in a regular function, when you want to declare a regular function, you always make it a standalone before you now invoke it and then, work with such function. But function expressions allows you to define a function within an expression instead of being a standalone declaration. Thirdly, a function expression can be assigned to a variable, passed as an argument to another function, or returned from a function. So these are some of the things you can do with function expression. You can either assign it to a variable, you can pass it as an argument to another function, or return from a function. So more or less like having a function inside a function. That is the passing as an argument to another function, or return from a function. Now, if you take a look at this example, const x equals function ab, return a asterisk b. That is a valid function in JavaScript. Remember when we work with arrow function, we saw something as simple as that. But without talking about arrow function here, just take a look at how simple this example is. Now, just by saying function name, then we pass the parameter, 2 parameter a and b, and then on the same line, just do return a asterisk b and then close it. Now this particular function here, I can just console.log to check it out. Console.log, and then I'll pass in that parameter 4 and 5. And then this will work. As you can see, 4 times 5 is 20. You can see this. And then just look at the expression. You can see that the function here is not a standalone declaration. It's assigned to a variable. So this is a valid function expression in JavaScript. After a function expression has been stored in a variable, the variable can be used as a function. Now take note of that. After a function expression has been stored in a variable, the variable can be used as a function. Now look at this same example here. Now look at it. This is the function expression here. And then we now make another variable. And then we are using the return value of this function here in another variable. So what this basically means is that I can just easily do something like this. I want to bring this back. So I can easily say let value now equals x, and I'll pass it a value of whatever it is that I want. And then take a quick look into my browser. You can see 45, which means that the value of this function here, I can use it in another function. I can use it in another variable, which is what I just did here exactly. Now, the function that we have here, which is this, is an anonymous function, because there's nothing like new function declaration. It's already been defined as an expression here. We are only using it, and this is what they call anonymous function. An example of anonymous function in JavaScript: a function without a name. Now take a look at this. You can see that there's nothing like maybe a function A return A, B, or return something. So it's completely anonymous. There's no name. It's just that function of that value that we are passing in order to generate a new value that we want. Functions stored in variable do not need function names. They are always invoked, called using the variable name. So when you want to invoke functions are storing variables, you don't need to call them with the function name. You just invoke them using the variable name, and then you get an output, just as what we looked at together now. The functions above that we just did end with a semicolon because they are a part of an executable statement. So I'm referring to this function, this one. Now, because it's a part of executable statement, it's ended with a semicolon, but with or without semicolon, I think with JavaScript, it will still work. Yeah. But then if you add a semicolon like this, it will work. And if you don't add a semicolon, it will definitely also work for you in your code. So a quick recap of what we have done is that you use function expressions when you are assigning functions to a variable. So when you are assigning functions to a variable, that is one of the way where function expression is needed. When you are assigning a functions to variable, when you are passing function as arguments, when you are creating callbacks where you need a function inside another function, and when you are working with arrow functions, just like the demonstration here, you can see how simple this example is, and it can also be used as an arrow function in JavaScript. Do not forget that concept of arrow function where you just add this and then you pass in the arrow in between, something like this. And then you can see I just converted that function expression to an arrow function, and you can see that it is still working. So there are some common pitfalls that you should be aware of as a developer. When calling function before it is defined, it can give you an error because function expression is not hoisted, which means that you can't use it until it is declared. Then don't confuse expression with declaration. Declaration is always something like this. You have the function keyword, and then you give it a name, sum, and then you pass in, maybe you have a parameter, and then you can make that curly braces and do a whole lot of things. So do not confuse. People sometimes students confuse function expression with function declaration. This is a standalone declaration for a normal regular function, but an expression is always assigned to a variable, as you can see in this demonstration. And then hosting, I've explained it, expecting it to work without having declare it, and then misusing this in an arrow functions as well. So this statement in JavaScript, when you misuse it in arrow function, it can also give an error. So this is how JavaScript expression works when working with functions in JavaScript. So this one, the topic is JavaScript expression and not argument objects again. So sorry, I forgot to change that. So what we have here is the JavaScript expression, this code that you can see beneath. Thank you, and in the next lesson, we'll continue. Do have a nice time.